What is up, guys? Welcome back to the 40K Cafe, and today we're going to be talking about the childhood of the Primarch of the 17th Legion, Lorgar Aurelian. The Primarch of the Wordbearers would have his gestation pod teleported to the planet Colchis. From the get-go, this is extremely important, seeing as Colchis was one of the planets that used to worship the old gods. In fact, it was identified as the planet of the old gods. They would describe it as a planet where religion was in the air, in the dust, in the sun, in the very atmosphere itself. It goes into further description as that religion was such a part of the people's culture that it may as well have been as natural as a baby crying. If you couldn't tell what I mean by the reference of the old gods, by the way, I was referring to the old gods known as Korn, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. That's right, the old gods would be the chaos gods. The people of Colchis would then teach their people as such. For generations, it was taught that disease would come and cull over populations, but these times would pass, for nothing can remain unchanged. In Toe, it was taught that war would come as natural as the rain and stain the ground with blood, but this would not be the absence of joy, for even when things may seem lost, joy can still be present. Regardless, although all may seem lost, the only thing that can truly remain would be the gods. So from the get-go, Lorgar was destined to be a part of a religious culture and eventually teach it. It was one of these outcasted nomadic tribes known as the Declined that would find Lorgar and bestow him his name, which would mean the Raincaller. Approximately 17 days later, Lorgar had already grown to the size of a young child and was then found upon by Cor Pharon. It is important to note that Cor Pharon was an exiled priest from the ruling council of the world, which was known as the Covenant. The reason for his exile was because he was an advocate believer that the Covenant Council should enforce and be more aggressive with their conversion process. Upon discovering Lorgar and realizing that the boy was destined for greatness and that he was blessed by the gods, Cor Pharon would go on to slaughter the Declined in order to cover up the origins of Lorgar. Cor Pharon was aggressively, emotionally, and physically abusive. And despite this, Lorgar would end up adopting the beliefs of the Colchizian culture and research everything possible regarding these aspects. In fact, among his research, he would end up coming to believe that there was one God greater than all, or at least one God to be held above all. He would simply identify this being as the One. Pharaoh would dismiss these notions, calling them heresy outright, and would emotionally abuse Lorgar, creating somewhat of a dependence on him. Although, despite everything and disagreeing with his adopted father, Corpharon, and even sustaining and going through all the abuse, Lorgar would not disown his beliefs of the One. In fact, he would mature, grow further to surpass his adopted father, and with his charisma, end up creating his own covenant of the people and the followers of the One. People would attempt to murder Corpharon, and after Lorgar would save him, Corpharon would end up giving Lorgar a new name and end up becoming a devout follower himself. He would then name Lorgar the new bearer of the word. Finally, after amassing a massive army and followers, Lorgar would advance on the capital city of Colchis. It is here that at the gates of this capital city, Lorgar would give such a charismatic speech that actually the lower priesthood of the covenant would go on to dispatch themselves the ruling council of the covenant and present their bodies to Lorgar after opening the gates. Not long after conquering the planet, Lorgar would receive visions of a gleaming individual clad in armor that would descend onto the planet. He would then preach of this vision and to expect the One. Here, I find it important to note that although the new belief of the One would take over the planet of Colchis, many, and I do mean many, of the populace would still in secret worship the old ones. This would lay the foundation for the inevitable fall and corruption of the word bearers. Now, as per his visions and predictions, the Emperor would eventually arrive on Colchis. And when he did, Lorgar knew that this was exactly the individual who he's been waiting for and having visions of. And so when the Emperor stepped foot onto the planet, Lorgar knelt in resplendence and devotion, as well as the rest of the planet. Lorgar would go on to quickly take up the mantle of being the leader of the word bearers, take his people into the stars, and lead the devotion and write the book of the God Emperor. This book would eventually become known as the Lectitio Divinitatis. And little did Lorgar know that throughout this whole entire time, his own adopted father, Cor Ferron, would still, in secret, worship the old gods and denouncing any form of faith in the Emperor of mankind. Personally speaking, I wouldn't want to be a part of Lorgar's childhood, seeing as he was constantly abused and led to misbelieve countless different things and always pulled one way or another, people fighting for his devotion and loyalty. It all just seems like a really big headache to me, including the trauma. And with that being said, let me know what you want to hear next, and follow for more.